Scorpio, something sacred is unfolding right now. Death draws near. But so does the ghost from your past, and what happens next could change everything. If you're watching this today, know this isn't a coincidence. It's a divine appointment. There are no accidents in a universe this precise, especially not when your soul has been silently calling for a sign. This is not just a horoscope reading. This is a spiritual initiation. A moment where your past, your pain, and your personal power intersect in a way they never have before. You may feel it already, a subtle shift in your spirit. A name returning in a dream. A memory flickering just beneath the surface. Something or someone you thought you buried long ago is moving toward you again, not to reclaim you, but to reveal who you've become without them. So let me ask you this, Scorpio, what in you has long been dead, but never truly laid to rest? This is not about fear. This is about release. The return of this shadow, this ghost from your past, is not a punishment. It is a sacred ritual of closure. The universe doesn't want you to forget, it wants to know, do you still need that old attachment to feel safe? Or have you finally become the steady ground you once gave away? Right now, you are being watched not by judgment, but by the divine. By the part of you that has waited lifetimes for this exact moment of remembrance, reckoning, and rebirth. With the Sun, Mars, and Uranus all activating your 8th house, the house of death, transformation, karmic ties, and soul contracts, you are being asked to stand in a space that only the brave enter, the space where a soul lets go without needing closure, because it has finally found peace within. The Death card. The Judgment card. These are not omens. They are invitations. They whisper not of endings, but of thresholds. Of a door number 11 opening not behind you, but within you. Scorpio, you are not weak because your heart still remembers. You are human. And you are holy. This month is not about holding it all together. It's about letting it fall apart, only what no longer belongs, and rising softer, deeper, stronger. You are not watching this because you're lost. You're watching because you've been found by a higher version of yourself, by a faith you can't always explain, and by a message that knows exactly where you are in your journey. So I ask you now, with full presence, do you still tremble when the past knocks? Or can you open the door without needing to hold on? If that question echoes inside you, if your breath catches or your spirit stirs, leave a comment below with just one word that describes what you're feeling right now. Let that word be your signal to the universe that you are ready for what comes next. And allow me, just for a moment, to say thank you. Thank you for your presence. For every like, every share, every comment that deepens our collective intention. Your support of this channel, Miracle of the Sign, allows these soul-shifting messages to reach those who are ready to remember. You are not alone on this path, and your quiet strength is seen. Believe me, Scorpio, you will want to stay with me until the very last second of this video. Because what the universe is about to reveal to you next is nothing short of divine. Now tell me, a hat called you here today? Let's take a breath. Let's begin. Scorpio, you have always known how to stand at the edge of transformation with your heart wide open. And now, as November unfolds, you are once again being called to the threshold where endings and beginnings blur, where one breath exhales the past, and the next inhales a new existence. There is something exquisitely sacred about this timing, and it is no accident that the stars, the cards, and even the numbers themselves are all converging to whisper the same truth: you are ready. With the sun illuminating your 8th house, the domain of death, rebirth, deep psychological truth, and soul bonds, you are not simply experiencing a season, you are entering a portal. Mars energizes this house, awakening old patterns that once protected you but now limit you. And Uranus, the bringer of disruption and divine innovation, shakes loose anything that no longer aligns with your becoming. This cosmic activation is not here to destroy you, Scorpio. It is here to awaken you to your own buried power. The 8th house is not about loss in the way most people understand it. It is about surrendering what you thought was essential, only to discover what is eternal. You may feel like things are falling apart, but in truth, they are falling together in a more honest, more aligned way. The discomfort, the uncertainty, even the quiet emotional chow sit is not failure. It is sacred friction. It is the soul turning over, revealing its deeper layers, its unspoken prayers. And you, Scorpio, are being asked not to run, but to remain still long enough to feel the message behind the trembling. The tarot confirms what the stars reveal. The Death card and Judgment appear together not as a warning, but as an initiation. Death, as you know, is not an end but a metamorphosis. It is the chrysalis phase, where everything dissolves so that the impossible becomes possible. And Judgment? It calls you back not to the past, but to your highest self, your soul's true assignment. Together, these cards say, the part of you that was built on survival is ready to be replaced by the version of you that chooses to live, not just exist. There's a powerful metaphor here. Imagine a lake that has been drained after years of holding the same water. Its surface was calm, even beautiful, but its depths had grown stale, unmoving. Now, the water recedes, and the lake bed is exposed, cracked, raw, unfamiliar. And yet, it must be this way. Because only when the basin is emptied can it receive fresh waters, new currents, and life. That lake, dear Scorpio, is you. Numerology also lends its voice to this season. The number 9 echoes throughout your field now, the sacred number of release, finality, and the wisdom that comes after many cycles. It urges you to let go with grace, to recognize what no longer serves your evolution, even if it once meant everything to you. And then there is 11, the master number, the gate, the spiritual twin pillars that stand between one world and the next. You are standing there now. You are not meant to sprint forward, nor to retreat in fear. You are meant to pause, to feel the pull of your intuition, and to walk through with trust. This is not about fixing what is broken. It's about allowing what's dead to die so that what's truly alive can find you. And perhaps, in the midst of it all, you'll remember what Psalm 46 verse 10 gently reminds us: be still, and know that I am God. In that stillness, you reclaim your authority not as someone waiting for signs, but as someone who has become the sign. If you're feeling like you're hovering between two versions of yourself, one who is fading and one who is still taking shape, know that this is exactly where you're meant to be. You are standing between two worlds. One is familiar but suffocating. The other is unknown but calling your name. Trust that you are not here by accident. You are here because your soul chose to evolve, no matter how painful, no matter how uncertain. And if any part of this speaks to something you haven't yet been able to say out loud, let it speak now. Leave a word in the comments below that captures your feeling in this moment. Not from a but for you. So that your energy joins this sacred space, and so the universe knows. You're listening. You're ready. You're walking forward. There comes a moment in every spiritual journey where the past doesn't just linger quietly in the background, it circles back. It knocks. It tests. And when it does, it rarely announces itself with clarity. Instead, it shows up wearing the familiar face of an old love, a repeating situation, or an emotion that catches you off guard. For Scorpio, this return is not random. It is part of a deeper spiritual rhythm, one that is orchestrated by the energy of rebirth itself. After all, you are ruled by Pluto, the planet of transformation. And Pluto never revisits without reason. If something or someone is resurfacing now, it's not here to reconnect. It's here to reveal your evolution. What often confuses the heart is that these returns feel intimate. They stir something real because they once were. But just because something was meaningful doesn't mean it still belongs. That's why this isn't a second chance at reconciliation. This is a mirror. The person or situation returning is not the gift. The gift is the clarity you now have. The test is whether you'll make the same choice you made when you were still healing, still unsure, still needing permission to let go. But you've changed. Haven't you? Here's the truth many are afraid to name. We don't tremble because we still love them. We tremble because they remind us of the version of ourselves that didn't yet know how to say no. The version that thought survival required sacrificing boundaries. The version that equated chaos with passion. That emotional shakiness? That's not longing. That's a trauma echo. And this time, you don't need to silence it or surrender to it. You're allowed to listen without losing yourself. This is why the past returns. Not to continue, but to confirm. The universe is not being cruel, it's being honest. It wants to see if you're ready to close the loop without needing closure. Because healing isn't always about confrontation or grand endings. Sometimes healing is quiet recognition. It's the peace that rises when you no longer crave what once destabilized you. You've grown. You've sat in silence with your pain and turned it into strength. You've rewritten the meaning of your own value. That's why when this person or memory reappears, it may feel confusing, but it's not a message to go back. It's a message that you don't need to. You don't need to relive that chapter to prove you've outgrown it. You only need to choose differently. So take a breath. Close your eyes. Imagine their face softly, without resistance. If your chest tightens, you're still holding something that wants to be released. But if your body relaxes, if you feel calm, even grateful without attachment, then you're standing in your new energy. You're responding not with reaction, but with remembrance. You are not who you were when they left. There's no shame in still feeling something. There is only truth in recognizing that feeling is not the same as needing. Let that guide you. And if today you sense something or someone making their way back into your orbit, ask yourself, is this a test or a return? And which version of you is responding? If any part of your heart whispered yes, write this in the comments. I know they're returning. Not to manifest them back, but to affirm your awareness. You're not asleep at the wheel anymore. You see what's happening. You see who you've become. And if you can greet this return with steady eyes and a steady heart, you've already passed the final test. Not by proving anything to them, but by finally proving something to yourself. Scorpio, your kind of transformation isn't surface level. It doesn't just touch the skin, it reaches the marrow. When you love, you do so with a loyalty that stretches beyond lifetimes. When you trust, you place your entire foundation into that faith. That's why, when something breaks, it's not simply a moment of pain, it's a collapse of the inner structure you so carefully built around safety, connection, and devotion. Others may not see it. They may think you moved on, that you seem strong, composed, perhaps even unaffected. But you and I both know that when a Scorpio lets go, it's not a clean cut. It's a spiritual surgery. This is why rebirth for you isn't a quick escape. It's not an impulsive flight away from pain. Your rebirth is sacred. It is a commitment, not a reaction. It's not about running from what broke you. It's about rising with clarity, with a renewed declaration of who you choose to be now. This is not a denial of the past. It's a vow to your future. When we speak of healing for Scorpio, we must honor the depth of what you've survived. You didn't just lose a person or a situation, you lost a part of your own identity that was entangled with them. And this is why you still feel their echo in moments of silence. It's not weakness. It's memory. It's your soul checking to see whether it's safe to finally release what it once held so tightly. In therapeutic practice, this phase is often called reintegration. You're not becoming someone entirely new. You're reclaiming parts of yourself that were given away, silenced, or reshaped to please others. And as you shed the skin that no longer fits, discomfort is normal. There's no shame in still aching when the weather of the past brushes against your present. Growth, especially for you, comes with grief. But grief isn't a signal to retreat, it's an invitation to rise. It's important to remind you of something here. You are not weak because your heart still trembles at old names. You are not stuck because tears still come when no one is watching. You are simply shedding. You are in the middle of what nature does so beautifully but quietly, the letting go of the old to make room for what is real, rooted, and enduring. And maybe, in your quietest hours, you've wondered if your ache makes you unlovable. It doesn't. In fact, it makes you sacred. Because you didn't give up. You sat with it. You stayed. And through it all, you become the safe space you once needed from others. In the book of Psalms, it is written, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." That's not just poetics, it's an energetic truth. Even science shows us that healing begins when we stop resisting pain and start witnessing it with compassion. And you've done that. Perhaps not loudly, perhaps not publicly, but in the quiet spaces of your life, you've been healing with grace. That is power. That is rebirth. So if you've ever cried in silence over someone who never came back, if you've ever mourned alone with no one to validate the depth of your loss, then I invite you to say it out loud now, not for them, but for you. Leave a comment that says, "I healed in silence." Let that be your badge of quiet victory. Let it be a signal to the universe that you did the brave thing not once, but many times over. Because true transformation doesn't come from pretending it never hurt. It comes from choosing to grow anyway. And this, Scorpio, is what makes your journey unlike anyone else's. You didn't run from your wounds. You met them with your whole heart. And that is your vow. That is your rising. That is your rebirth. When it comes to lasting transformation, it is never enough to simply understand what must be released. You must engage with it, embody it, and let it flow through every layer of your energy field. Scorpio, this is where your power becomes practical. This is the moment when your healing stops being a quiet internal experience and starts becoming a frequency you live and radiate. And because your journey is deeply energetic, everything around you, from the colors you wear to the habits you choose, either supports or disrupts your healing process. That's why this phase is not about waiting for change to happen. It's about choosing to align with it consciously, in every breath and every decision. Color, for example, is more than visual. It's vibrational. Burgundy or deep wine red carries the energy of endings. It's not the color of loss, but of sacred closure. Wearing it as you let go of old identities or emotions signals to your body and subconscious that you are ready to seal that chapter with reverence, not resistance. Soft white gray, like morning mist, invites mental stillness and inner clarity. It's ideal for meditation, journaling, or simply sitting with your thoughts without judgment. And gold awakens. It doesn't just symbolize success, it tunes your aura to receptivity, helping you embody worthiness as you step toward what is new. In love, this season asks you to pause before reaching backward. Not out of pride, but out of wisdom. Ask yourself honestly, does this person truly recognize the version of you that has emerged from the fire? Or are they still relating to the version of you that once accepted less than what you now know you deserve? Let this be your guidepost, not whether the connection still exists, but whether it honors the growth you fought so hard for. Your health, too, is calling for a quieter form of attentiveness. The intensity of Scorpio season can stir emotional tension, and this often manifests in the nervous system or hormonal balance. Instead of pushing through, let yourself soften. Avoid stimulants and inflammatory foods for at least 10 days. Choose grounding herbal teas like chamomile, raspberry leaf, or ashwagandha to restore balance. And when the world feels too loud, remember, silence is also medicine. Financially, the universe is offering you signals, opportunities that might seem subtle now but are preparing to bloom. But there is also a warning: if your current source of income drains you, depletes your values, or traps you in patterns of emotional survival, it is time to release it. This doesn't mean you must abandon security. It means redefining what security actually feels like in your body. Sometimes, the door to abundance only opens when you close the one that no longer supports your spirit. Career and purpose ask you to go deeper this month. It's not enough to chase status or survival. Scorpio energy is about soul work. Let yourself write new goals, not just to get ahead, but to feel aligned. Ask, what kind of work would make me proud, not just of what I earn, but of who I become? And when the mind grows heavy, return to the simplicity of the body. Place your hand over your heart. Feel its rhythm. Say slowly, I no longer need others to make me feel safe. I am the steady ground I've been searching for. Let this be your 3-minute ritual every day. It doesn't need incense, music, or perfect posture. It just needs your truth. You don't need to chase light. You are learning to become the kind of steady flame that attracts what is real. The healing you seek is already reaching for you, but it will only land where it feels welcomed. So prepare the space. Clear the energy. Choose with awareness. And watch what unfolds. And so, Scorpio, We arrive at the moment that was always meant to find you not as a test of strength, but as a mirror to the quiet power you've been cultivating all along. The final door stands before you now. Not because you are weak. Not because the universe wishes to confuse you. But because you are ready. Truly ready. This isn't a decision about someone else's apology, their regret, or even their recognition of your growth. It's a decision about your own inner alignment. Do you still need the echoes of the past to validate your worth? Or has your healing become its own quiet proof? When they return, and they often do, it won't be with the same chaos as before. No, this time they may come in softly, respectfully, maybe even with admiration. They might say, "You've changed. You're stronger now." And you'll feel it. The part of you that used to ache for their approval may stir for a moment. But something will be different. Instead of grasping, you'll feel grounded. Instead of clinging to the idea of closure, you'll notice it already lives within you. Their return is not the reward. Your peace is. This is where the most sacred shift happens. You remember who you were when they left. The version of you that waited, that doubted, that negotiated their own worth in exchange for someone else's presence. But you are not that person anymore. You've grieved. You've grown. You've rewritten the story. And now, the question isn't whether they're sincere. It's whether their presence fits into the world you've rebuilt without them. There's a reason Scorpio energy is associated with death and rebirth, not because you seek drama, but because you do not fear depth. You know that walking away from something familiar doesn't mean losing love. It means honoring the truth that not all love is meant to stay. Some of it arrives to awaken. Some of it returns to see if you're still asleep. And so you stand at the edge of this threshold, not with bitterness, but with clarity. You're no longer the person who needs someone else to tell you you're worthy. You know you are. You've earned that knowing in silence, in shadow, in all the nights you held your own hand when no one else would. This final moment isn't about them at all. It's about whether you will choose yourself now that you've become someone who no longer needs to be chosen. This isn't a grand goodbye. It's not a final speech. It's a quiet shift in your posture. A breath of certainty in your chest. It's the sacred pause where you smile not because they've returned, but because you no longer have to. And if your heart trembles, that's okay. That tremble is the last fragment of who you used to be. Let it pass. Let it leave. You're not rejecting love. You're choosing the version of love that begins within you, not the one that requires you to abandon yourself. So ask yourself the only question that truly matters now. Will you go back because it's familiar, even if it asks you to shrink? Or will you walk forward into the unknown, into the unfamiliar light simply because your soul says you're finally ready? If you hear your heart answer with stillness, then you know. You've already chosen. And if you need something to carry with you as you walk forward, let it be this: I am ready to step into the new version of myself, steady, clear, and no longer led by fear. That is your vow. That is your liberation. That is your rebirth. Scorpio, if you've made it this far, I want you to take a deep breath, not because everything is solved, but because something inside you has shifted. You didn't just listen to words today. You walked through a ritual. You allowed yourself to face a truth many would rather run from. And that is not weakness. That is sacred courage. The kind of courage that doesn't shout or need to be seen, but the kind that quietly rewrites destiny one brave step at a time. You see, you were never the victim. You were never left behind. You were being prepared. Prepared not to be saved, but to rise. Not to be chosen, but to choose yourself. There is something profoundly holy about a soul who no longer begs for validation, but instead embodies value from the inside out. And you, Scorpio, are that soul. This journey was never just about releasing a person or a memory. It was about stepping into the true frequency of who you are. And now that you've tasted what it feels like to hold your own power without clinging to the past, can you feel it? That quiet knowing that you're not who you used to be? That you no longer need to chase peace because you're becoming the place peace naturally rests in? You are not alone in this process. There is a reason you felt drawn to this message today. Perhaps it's because your ancestors are watching. Perhaps it's because you are the one in your lineage chosen to end the cycles of fear, codependency, or emotional silence. Or maybe it's simply because you are ready to live a life that finally feels like it fits. What if your healing is not just your own? What if your decision to walk away from what no longer resonates is lighting the path for someone else who's still afraid to try? I don't wish you a perfect November. I wish you a real one. One with moments that crack you open only to show you your own light. One where you don't just survive but feel, choose, and transform. A month that humbles you into remembering, you never needed permission to evolve. You only needed to believe you were worthy of more. If something in your spirit whispered, yes, during this video, I invite you to affirm it now. Leave a comment below and write, I'm ready to live in alignment with my true worth. Not just as a statement but as a sacred declaration. And if you know someone who needs this light, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it forward. You never know whose turning point your bravery might ignite. And from all of us at Miracle of the Sign, thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being part of this sacred space. Your presence here matters. Your healing matters. And your lighties, even when it flickers, is being seen, not by the shadows of your past, but by a divine energy that knows exactly where you're going. You're not being haunted. You're being led. Home. To yourself. Let's keep walking. Together.